Ladies and gentlemen, we have Scott Dalinger. He's going to do the 40-degree cold plunge. How do you feel, buddy?
I'm scared shitless right now. I did this once before, and it was not fun.
It's never fun. But that's not the point. The point is to overcome. Just one fell swoop, buddy. And he goes. Woo-hoo! He's in there.
What's the trick to this? Just tell yourself that you're warm.
Welcome to Frozen Millionaires, the show where we submerge successful people in ice-cold water, then sit them down to talk about how they've achieved success. I'm your host, George McCleary, and I have a penchant for ambition, for entrepreneurship, and for watching my friends suffer in cold water. No tech CEOs or Wall Street titans here. These are the self-made millionaires next door, and they're fresh out of the cold plunge and telling their stories. What's up, friends, and welcome to episode 2 of Frozen Millionaires. Taking that cold plunge like a man was real estate wholesaler Scott Dalinger. Scott is my guest today, and although he's only been in real estate for a few years, Scott has built a really impressive wholesaling business as well as a real estate portfolio chock full of income-producing assets. Today we talk about how he got his start doing sales internationally, how this experience helped him excel at real estate investment, and how he's built a business that allows him to travel the world, seek grand adventures, and really take advantage of the freedom that comes with financial independence. Let's get into it with our latest Frozen Millionaire, Scott Dalinger. In the studio today, we have a good friend of mine, Scott Dalinger. It's a real treat to have you here, buddy. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so are you feeling tingly? Like you feel like you want to run through a wall? Are you? What do you think of the plunge?
It's really difficult to do, at least in the beginning. I don't know if it gets easier, but I feel like peak awakeness.
Peak awakeness. That's a great way of putting it. I love it. So, do you see yourself doing it again?
Probably every time I come over to your house. I don't know that I'm ready to put myself through the suffering every day yet, and buy one like the last guest, but we'll see. Every time I come here, I'm going to be jumping in that thing.
That's right. Yeah, no, Dustin Miller, the previous guest, our first guest, the guinea pig, he jumped into the cold plunge and had a hilarious reaction. So I'm going to be uploading that sooner or later. So if you haven't seen it, by the time you're listening to this, it should be posted. Go look at Dustin Miller's reaction to the cold plunge. It's amazing. So Scott, now that you got your adrenaline pumping and your blood vessels are, full of energy and blood, let's talk about your business, because you are one of the business people. I'm just going to come out and say it that I most admire in our little circle, because just from what you've built in such a short amount of time is really nothing short of remarkable. Started off doing something completely unrelated to real estate, and then has since then built a real estate empire just in a few short years. Why don't you just take me back to the beginning and pretend we've never met and tell me what you've done from the jump, or I guess maybe even before real estate?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't call what I've built an empire yet, but we're working at it. Before real estate, I was in the corporate world, George. I was doing sales in North America for a Belgian-owned company with a U.S. headquarters out of Knoxville, working in Southern California, working from home in Southern California.
That's right. You're a SoCal boy.
That's right. So that job was I would basically fly all over the United States and meet with customers in the transportation industry and sell them our high-temperature, high-quality insulation products that goes around jet engines and fire protection products that go inside of trains. And I really enjoyed the job. I loved the travel. I had a great boss and a great company to work for. I'd go to Belgium from time to time, and it's something that I could have continued to do.
But this is jet engine insulation that you're selling?
Yes.
What a niche product.
Yes, very niche product, high cost, very specialty product.
Okay, is this hard to sell? Is this easy to sell? Is this selling? Did you have to be an ice to Eskimo salesman, or is this thing flying off the shelves?
Yeah, not flying off the shelves. These are long sales cycles. You're basically trying to get spec'd into the engines. So there's like military companies, or let's say manufacturers that would make engines for different military applications, and for other products for defense companies, and then your regular Airbuses and Boeings that you sit on, that high temperature insulation is inside of them. So we would work with their several rungs down the line, get our product spec'd in.
Right.
So basically with the engineers, which was a neat part of the sales cycle, because we didn't have to worry about purchasing. We didn't have to worry about price. we're working with the engineers, showing them how our product is the best. They would spec it in, and purchasing would have to buy it. They would have no choice.
There you go. I love it. They're forced to buy it. So that taught you sales, because ultimately what you got into in real estate was wholesaling, which essentially is like a sales job, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, wholesaling is sales. It's not real estate. And I had other sales jobs before that, but I've always been in sales leading up to real estate. So I left that company in that industry because my income was capped. It was a European company. No matter how much I sold, they were always going to cap how much I was allowed to earn.
Wow. Note to CEOs down there, never cap compensation. Your best people will leave.
Never cap Scott Dalinger.
Never cap Scott Dalinger. Yeah, so you're in sales and you're crushing it, but you have an MBA, don't you?
I don't have an MBA.
Didn't you go to Oregon?
I went business school.
Oh, okay, undergrad business.
Undergrad business school.
Yeah, shout out. I also have an undergrad business degree.
Yeah. Go Ducks.
Go Ducks. Go Eagles. I went to Emory, but I did go to Oregon for 1 year, so still go Ducks.
So my income was capped. I'm like, I want to earn more money. I'm not earning enough to ever buy a place in Southern California. So let's figure out, how do regular people get rich, or at least make a lot of money in a short period of time?
So you just Googled how do regular people get rich? And yeah, no, that really sums up real estate. It should be the official real estate slogan.
Exactly.
So you look up how to get rich, real estate. And so, that's kind of the natural progression. Kind of wholesaling is sort of like the bedrock under which a lot of real estate investors get their start.
Right. Yeah. My parents had some rental properties, and they turned me on to the Bigger Pockets podcast. So I listened to that and just sort of like really binged it, many, many episodes in a very short period of time. And I heard the wholesalers, and I thought that was really cool, because I was negotiating in my job for, $10,000 raise or like bonus increment. And meanwhile, there's some wholesaler goes on like, yeah, I found this deal, and then, I made 15 grand or I made 20 grand. And so I said to myself, wow, that's like, a 10% increase in salary, 15% increase in salary. That's huge. And then how much debt could I pay down with that? Because I still had student loans. So then there's other wholesalers that go on that are earning that every single month. So I said, what if I could do that every month? What if I could earn 30 grand a month doing this wholesaling thing? So all the different people that went on the podcast on Bigger Pockets, I was really drawn to the wholesalers, because just the speed with which they can make large amounts of money compared to the rental property guys that would say, oh, I bought this house, I grinded every day after work until midnight, and at the end we did a BRRRR, and then I have $300 a month cash flow. I'm like, well, I'm doing the math. Well, how many of those do you need to do to get 10K a month to live off of? And how long is that going to take? I said, no, that's going to take way too long. So that's why I chose wholesale.
So you're listening to Bigger Pockets. Your mind is racing. You're like, all right, I need to do this. Do you buy a book? Do you or do you just start calling people up? What do you do?
Yeah, the first thing that I did was I called up one of the guys that I heard, Elliott Smith. He's out of like Tri-Cities, Washington. So I called him up, said, hey, I was super inspired by your interview on Bigger Pockets. I'm going to be going out that way with my day job. Could we meet? And so Elliott was gracious enough to spend a few hours with me when I flew out that way. He answered all my questions. He gave me some advice. He brought me around some of his flips and rentals that he was doing.
Just out of the goodness of his heart.
On the goodness of his heart. But that really made it real for me, because it was like meeting a guy that I put on a pedestal at that time.
Yeah.
And heard him on a podcast, and there he was in the flesh, like actually doing this thing that I aspired to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then I tried to do it on my own just through YouTube. I got some letter campaigns, sent it out, like no results. It was horrible.
Is this in Southern California?
Southern California.
Okay, yeah, because down there, at least I get the impression that things are pretty saturated and competitive just due to the high price points. And
yeah, everywhere is competitive in the United States, I'd say, but down there is a whole different beast, and I never figured it out.
Yeah.
But my next step was I bought a course called Wholesaling Inc. And that course was very action oriented. It was not about education. It was like, this is step 1, this is step 2. Do what we say. Even if you disagree with it, just do it. And they had a cadence, every few days there was the next step in the lesson. We would have to go do something. So I just did all that and then built the foundations of my business. I still hadn't done any deals in Southern California, but I had the fundamentals in place and at least the basic processes in place. So I'd say like that's how I really learned.
Perfect. Okay, so you get basically like a coaching course, and you follow it to a T. And but you're still in SoCal and you haven't quite cracked the code, or had you moved to Portland by that point?
Still in SoCal, hadn't cracked the code, and I was at it for a year. And that took, I'd say, like, one thing that I did that I credit everything to is I just stuck with it. And I made the decision that I know that this works because I hear people on podcasts. It's not working here, so I need to change something and figure it out. But for a year, we were dumping my wife's paycheck into direct mail marketing.
Oh, wow.
With no return on that.
Right.
So that took a lot of faith to continue to do that week after week. Ultimately, we said, okay, it's not working here. Let's pick a new market and just test it. So I had some family, my sister and my mom moved up here to Portland, and we started sending direct mail up to Portland.
And you'd gone to school in Eugene, so you had some familiarity.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I started also to cold call in Portland. And between those two things, I started to get some evidence that it would actually work here because people would call me off of my direct mail and say, okay, I have a house and I want to sell. And I got some good leads on the telephone. And based off of that alone, we made the decision, my wife and I, to move up here to Portland.
See, describe your first deal. So the phone rings or...
The first deal was a cold call to Allison Learman was her name.
Oh, okay. Shout out to Allison.
162nd Dartmouth in Gladstone. Yeah, Gladstone. And I cold called her and said, hey, I want to know if you'd consider an offer on your property. She said, well, I hadn't really thought of it, but yeah, my husband passed away and we're still in this house and the house has some issues and it would be kind of nice to get out of here. So I said, okay, well, let me come by. Actually, I was still in Southern California. So I said, let me send someone to go take pictures of the house and then we'll be able to make you an offer. So I sent my mom, who was already up here, to Allison's house. So my mom goes there and she builds a lot of rapport. I sent my mom with the contract. She looked at the whole house and she called me. We discussed offer price. And right there, my mom began negotiating with her and trying to close that deal.
Love it. Go mom.
Yeah. So we were, she was going back and forth on price and negotiating and got very, very close, like the 1 yard line. And ultimately, the lady needed time to think about it. We didn't get the deal that day, but I knew that we were so close. So I continued to call her and follow up with her. She never answered any of my calls or text messages after that point, or my mom's.
Oh.
So 2 or 3 months later, once I moved up here, when I was on that side of town, I just drove over to her house and door knocked her.
Oh, really?
And told her who I was. She let me in, and I sat in her living room for like 2 hours and just overcame objection after objection after objection. And I remember her saying, well, I want to sell it, and I'd love to do this with you, but this. So she would throw some objection at me.
Yeah, what are some examples of those objections? Because that's a big thing in sales, is overcoming objections. Doing so gracefully and not being salesy, or
Yeah. So she would say, "Well, the price is too low," and then I would have to overcome that objection. And I was really trying to stay low because I wanted to make. In wholesaling, you have to lock it up low enough so that you can mark it up and still the cash buyer makes money.
Right.
So I'd say, well, I can't come up on price, but what if I was able to just let you leave everything in the house? Would that help you out? Okay, well, that would help me out a bit. Okay, well, what if you didn't have to fix anything? Well, what if you were able to stay in the house maybe like another month after we close? That way you have some money, you could go rent a place or you could go buy another place.
Right.
And so we kind of like nailed down that the price was going to be okay, throwing in all those things. Then it was, well, I want to do this, but I'm going to need time to find a place, the next house I want to buy, because we want to buy a bigger house here in Gladstone. And I don't know how long it's going to take. It could be right away. It could be 6 months. So then it was more what ifs. Well, what if we can do the contract today and then give you time? What if we did the contract today and let you stay in the house for a month? It's okay to repeat things. Sometimes we just repeat our same objection handle and just say it a different way.
Yeah.
But when you're in that moment, you need something to stay in the game.
Totally.
So I would give these sometimes the same, sometimes different objection handles to her. So she needed time to find a place. That was her big one. And we said that let's do the contract today and we'll push the closing date out. And if you find something sooner, then we'll bring the closing date in. So that worked for her. then the last one, the big one was, okay, I still really need to think about it. I'm like, Allison, we've talked about everything that you said that you wanted. There's something else that you're not telling me. What is it?
So you had to fish out a piece of information.
Yeah. If someone's not doing a deal with you and you know that you're close and you know that they want to, there's something else. And the best thing to do is just ask. I said, what is it, Allison, that you're not telling me? And she said, well, there's someone that I know. I have a friend that he said that he wanted to buy this house. So I just want to give him the opportunity before I sign with you, just, out of respect for our friendship, to let him at least come in here and see if he's actually going to buy it. So I said, okay, hey, I totally understand that. That's great of you to be so loyal. Let's do this. We have everything in place. I'm here right now. Let's just do the paperwork today. Can you get him here over the weekend? She said, yes. I said, okay, bring him by over the weekend. And if you call me on Monday and say, Scott, he wants to buy the house, I want to sell it to him, I'll tear up the contract. He thought about it for seemed like an eternity. But after probably about 10 seconds, she said,
the longest 10 seconds of your wholesaling career up till then.
Yes. She said, okay. And I'm like, all right, well, I got some paperwork in my car. Why don't I go grab that? And she's like, okay.
Great.
So I walked to my car, and I remember the walk to the car. I'm like, I hope she doesn't change her mind. I hope she doesn't change her mind.
Yeah, lock the door.
And now I've done it so many times, but that first time was you're shaking. It was so intense. And you know that this is going to be life-changing. So I got the paperwork, and we filled it all out. And I then wholesaled that deal, and we made $52,000 on it.
$52K on your first wholesale deal. That's remarkable.
And I gave notice to my job.
Oh my God.
That was it.
Right then and there.
Yeah.
Wow. How quickly did she move out where you were able to close?
So we did a 30-day move out after closing, and the cash buyer closed on it, gave her 30 days. She took a little bit more time, I think maybe another week.
Did you do an escrow holdback on that?
No, I didn't know what that was yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that's a little bit more advanced.
And this was also pre-COVID, but so, things are more difficult in Oregon, but not to the extent that they are today. But no escrow holdback.
Wow, that's great. So you made $52K on that first one, and so then you're still down in SoCal. So you're doing this all, but
by that point, I had moved up here.
Okay, got it. Okay, so then you're off to the races. But
then I was off to the races. Then it was direct mail, and then that first year was just insane. I got a bunch of deals like that in a short period of time.
So the main marketing channels for wholesaling, you hear about the direct mail, the cold calling. All this stuff, I guess I'm going to fast forward real quick to kind of modern day wholesaling, because word has gotten out. It's all over TikTok. It's all over social media. Hey, you can make money wholesaling. And it's no secret that, all these different marketing channels like cold calling, direct mail, text messaging, all that stuff. Everybody and their mom is doing them now. And I'm hearing a lot about how these are all really saturated. They're not working as well anymore. They do work, but maybe not as well. What marketing channels are you seeing trending upwards, and what marketing channels are you seeing trending downwards?
It's an interesting question, because you talk to you have your own experiences, and you're like, oh, cold calling doesn't work anymore. And then you attend a conference, and someone's like, I made all this money just from cold calling last year. So I think it really varies by the person and their operation and their inclinations, maybe the market. But what's not working for me anymore is cold calling.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something we've always done. What is working cold calling is when we're scaling it back. So I'd outsourced it to people in other countries with a lot of callers, and that's just really stopped working. But when we jump on the phones ourselves, we are getting good quality leads. So cold calling, dialing it back, having it smaller is working. The website's working. That's something I had to start 4 years ago.
And that's with SEO, right?
SEO, yeah. Back in the beginning of 2020, we started SEO on our website. So that's finally getting traction. We're getting a good lead flow. PPC is working. PPC is very, very expensive, but it's guaranteed leads and high quality leads.
Didn't you meet a guy at a conference one time that did nothing but PPC and spent $50K a month on it or something and was absolutely crushing it?
Yeah, just a couple months ago. It's Ben Towoff out of Miami.
Yeah.
I think his handle is America's Top Wholesaler. So, he's doing, hopefully this isn't proprietary, but I think he's spending like last year, $15K a day.
Oh, wow. That's a
on
lot.
PPC. It was a lot. It was 10 or 15K a day. And he was, no, that's probably too much. It's probably like 5K a day.
Still though.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I mean, the stakes are high. You got to be converting those, but he was doing it nationwide and also like really heavy in select markets and runs his whole business off of that and does great.
Wow. Good for him. Very cool. So yeah, so cold calling, I'm not surprised to hear that that's kind of trended downward, because I remember I was doing that several years ago and getting great results, and it's been kind of a slow, steady trickle kind of downward. But one thing that I've done recently is I've been calling on properties myself, stay sharp, and I've been doing different asset types that are a little bit bigger. They kind of want. I'm getting people that want to talk to the principal essentially, right off the bat. I am actually getting decent results and decent conversations when it's just me, like 10x easily what I'm getting with an offshore cold caller. And so that's just goes to show there's really no substitute for, just picking up the shovel yourself sometime. It's just not quite as manageable from like a scaling standpoint, because there's only so much time that you have. And which kind of brings me to the next part is, when you said we've been getting results, your team has grown. It's not just you anymore. You've got some other people. Describe your back then it was just you. Describe how you ramped up.
Sure. So in the beginning, it was just me and my wife. So my wife Alejandra is an integral part of our team.
Shout out to Alejandra.
Yeah, and I really realized probably over the last year that there's no way I could do what I do without her.
Mm-hmm.
And of course the team that I have today, which I'll explain what that looks like. We added a driver. So in the beginning, I put Alejandra in driving for dollars. Then we would skip trace. I would cold call them. We would mail them letters. Then we hired another driver. We lost that guy. Then we looked for another driver, which was Dylan, who currently works with me. And Dylan was crushing it with driving. He'd hit every goal. Then we put him on cold calling. He crushed cold calling. We're like, hey, we want to do texting. Dylan figured out texting, started texting. We got great leads. And then we put him into acquisitions. And he's been in acquisitions ever since. And now he's a sales manager for us. And in 2021, we added a second acquisition manager. And that person no longer works with us, but we have another acquisition manager now, Taylor. And Taylor's doing awesome. So yeah, I did really good by myself, but it's been more gratifying to grow a team. And because the results together with the team is far beyond anything that I was able to do or would be able to do by myself.
Totally.
And those guys are great. And then Shally is my VA in the Philippines. I think VA doesn't give full respect to what she does because she does so much for us. She's my assistant, but also she cold calls. She manages our cold callers. She does KPI reports for us. And basically any random task or like new software that we need to add, I'll say, hey, we're going to start using this software. Get us set up on it. And then she will learn it. She will talk with support. She gets us all set up. So she's really like the systems person.
Office, admin, assistant.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
And she sent me a very formal email asking for a raise the other day.
Really?
Yeah. And she absolutely deserves it.
Yeah. No, I also have an offshore VA like Shally. Shout out to Melody. And these people, if you treat them right and you pay them well, it's not hard to pay them well, and it's not hard to treat them right because their expectations are not high in comparison to what you would be paying for a comparable service here in the USA. And so I have always given steady raises, plenty of PTO, and what you get back is amazing. If you find the right people for an offshore assistant. So if you haven't gotten a VA, everybody out there in listener land, get one today. Yeah. or shop around. You might have to kiss a few frogs. I've definitely hired a handful of offshore talent that didn't end up actually being very talented, but
and give them opportunities to grow too. That's one reason why I give her a lot more responsibilities. It helps me for sure, but also it helps her because she could develop in her career and grow her skill set.
Totally. Yeah. Would you mind if I asked where she was at and what she was asking for raise wise?
She didn't throw a number at me.
Oh, okay. She's like, I would just like more money.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's fair.
She said, you've given me a lot more responsibilities than I had when I started, or since you last bumped my pay, and so please evaluate my salary.
Totally. A few times I've actually raised the salary, saying, "All right, I'm going to have you do this project, and it's going to take you a while to figure this out and everything. But after you do that, and after you get that, your value has gone up with me." So I'm going to pay you this much more. I've sort of just said like, hey, you're getting a raise, but you got to learn this thing.
Yep.
And that I think like is a really good motivator for anybody, offshore or not. So so you built your team, you're wholesaling, but then you've also kind of branched off kind of into the next level, because the next level in the real estate progression, shall we call it, is, it's wholesaling, and then you get into acquisitions and flips, and you've done some of that. Actually, you've done a fair amount of that. So you've gotten into that. Describe your journey into that.
So after not after wholesaling, during it, we decided to flip a house because we knew that we had a good deal. It was a $200,000 house in Milwaukee. But at that time, which was early 2020, we felt like $200,000, we would have been able to wholesale it for $210 and make $10,000. We're like, we know this is a good deal, but that's not enough money to make on this deal. So why don't we try flipping it? There was someone that told me flipping was easy, so I said, okay, flipping must be easy.
Oh my God, find this person.
Yeah.
Tell them they're
Luca Gorman.
Luca.
I blame you, Luca.
Come on, man.
So we bought that house, and you put a bunch of time into it. We did make money on it, and then I realized that flipping is a huge distraction from wholesaling. Once I found myself in the crawl space, the inhaling cat crap with no masks available because they were all sold out for COVID.
Oh my God.
I'm like, this is horrible.
So you're swinging the hammer yourself on this first one?
Not on purpose, but flipping is easy and it's not. And when it's not easy, it's when contractors disappear and walk off the job. And, we learned a lot of lessons in that first one. So when we kind of lost our contractors and there was no one to pick up the slack and we were 90% of the way there, I said, okay, let me just roll up my sleeves and finish this thing.
Always that last 10%, like that last 5% takes the last 20% of the time.
Paint and trim. I'm painting trim and not following up on leads, and it was just eating at me. So
oh man,
I said, I'm never going to do this again.
Yeah,
and that's when the next one. I did, but I did it differently. So the next house was one in Beaverton. And
wait, how much money did you make on that?
40.
Okay, so it was 10 with hardly any work, with just just disposition, and 40 by putting in some blood, sweat, and tears, basically.
That's right.
Okay, I mean, a 4X is not bad.
Yeah. So we realized, okay, we can do this. This is not rocket science. If we have a good enough deal, we can flip houses. But I didn't want to distract from my wholesale business. So I told Alejandra, you have to do it. And she did the next house, which is in Beaverton, and did a great job on that. And then I realized that she's good at it. She likes it. She's super responsible because she knows that basically she's as invested in it as I am or more. She knows that every dollar that we save through being smart and negotiating, finding the cheapest materials that are good, and getting bids from different contractors, that's an extra dollar in our pocket and towards our family and towards our future. So she's like the perfect person to have doing this. She would make all the good decisions that I would, but better ones.
Right.
Yeah.
So you find another one, and you do you make money on your second flip also?
We did, yeah.
Great.
We made about 60 on the second one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So even better. That's terrific.
Yeah, and then we found another one and did that. So, I wouldn't call us like house flippers. If I meet people, I'm not saying I'm a house flipper, but we do flip houses from time to time. Like if we get a wholesale deal, we're like, okay, this one looks pretty easy. We don't like to do any major renovations. We only like to do cosmetic stuff.
Yeah.
We may keep those and flip them.
Okay, so you're mainly doing cosmetic stuff only because it's a massive time suck to do anything beyond that, right?
Yeah, we're not house experts or real estate experts. Like we don't know that much about houses. I mean, we know a heck of a lot more now that we've done as many as we have, but
right.
This is not something we ever went to school to learn or got our GC's licenses. So we keep it simple.
Nonetheless, it's still on the menu. You're still doing it every so often, at least some cosmetic stuff. But then also you started to hold stuff, because this is something I talk about with all the guests: cash flow versus wealth building. Because the great thing about wholesaling is you're building cash flow. You've got money coming in, money that you can buy on food, speedboats, whatever you want to buy. But it doesn't necessarily build wealth unless you hang on to it in some way. And real estate is a great way to build wealth. We can all agree on that. So there does come a point at some point where you want to hang on to this stuff. When does that come for you?
That came for me in 2021. I was going through, I had a coach that year, a one-on-one wholesaling / business coach.
Was that Zach Booth?
Zach Booth, yeah. So after we, let's say, spent the first third of the year just sort of like dialing my wholesaling processes and building the team and stuff, then he started to talk to me about wealth building. And he started to have me track my net worth and put it all in a spreadsheet. And then he talked to me about the importance of growing your net worth. So once I put it all in a spreadsheet, then I started to, like, my brain changed the way I looked at deals and opportunities when they came in. So there was a deal that came in with a $230 purchase price in Northeast Portland. And I said to myself, okay, I could wholesale it and make this, or I could flip it and make this, or I can keep it as a rental and not make any of that and not get that cash, and maybe cash flow $300 or $400 a month, but add $100K to my net worth. So I decided on that one. I'm like, let's get our first rental. Let's try this. Because I wanted to see that net worth number grow significantly, which it can just by doing one deal.
That's how you become a millionaire.
That is how you become a millionaire. So yeah, so we bought that house, we did a BRRRR on it, and then we have that as a rental. And then the net worth bump is obviously going to be all that equity that you have. So that's the difference between the mortgage payment that we got and then what it's worth today.
Gotcha. So you've got just a minimal amount of cash flow. You're keeping your head above water because you financed it conventionally.
Conventionally, yeah. And of course, as happened to many people, the rates went up during that. So we ended up on that one, we're cash flow negative currently.
Yeah, that will happen. And I'll tell this to anybody who listens. Negative cash flow is not a good thing. You really don't want it in your rentals. But as long as it's really not giving you as long as you have the cash flow to be able to accommodate it, it's not necessarily going to sink the ship if you're losing, $100 a month or something like that. But you still have that equity banked, and you still have that $100K that you didn't have to give half of that money away to the government. So, I still think it's it's not a bad thing if you're chipping away at, $1,200 a year or something, but you're still, like, over the long term earning a whole lot more than that. Not the worst thing in the world. All right, rant over. But so you kept that one, and you started the spreadsheet for your net worth. And by the way, if you're trying to build wealth out there in listener land, if you're trying to build wealth, you need to have a spreadsheet. You need to track it. You need to see where you're at.
You need to know where you're at.
Yeah, with all your assets and liabilities. Myself and anybody on this show, I guarantee you, they're all keeping track of it on a spreadsheet. They've got their assets, they got their liabilities, and they got their bottom line, and that is your net worth. That's your wealth. And when Zach was explaining I guess, cash flow versus wealth to you, what did he say to you? What stuck out? Because I've got my own little rant on that, but I'm curious what Zach told you then that stuck with you.
Well, what Zach said is that when you have net worth, you have more and better options. And it's an insulation against things that can happen. It's the opportunity to do anything that you want in life, the more net worth that you have. So if you just have cash flow, that can go away when circumstances change. But when you have net worth, it builds a solid foundation for you to do whatever it is that you want to do. So
I see. And if you follow Scott on social media, he said you will see that Scott does do a lot of things that he wants to do. Scott is an avid adventurer. He goes down to Colombia. He goes on these remote fishing trips. This is kind of why we do this, is it not? I mean, earning money and self-actualization. Getting to where you want to go professionally feels good. We would do it anyway, but being able to put that money to living a good life and having fun and everything. That's something I've noticed that you've done over the past few years. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, it's something I've noticed that you've done. And I said, If George can do it, I can do it. And so sometimes it gets a little bit out of balance, and then you got to dial it back and put your nose to the grindstone.
Oh, it sure does. Yeah, I can attest to that.
And especially in the Pacific Northwest here, we have like 3 months or possibly 4 months of good weather per year, and then the rest of it's crap. So
yep.
We really feel, at least I feel like I have to get as much in as possible during those 3 or 4 months. So yeah, we work a little bit less here in the summer here.
Yeah. We both basically been on vacation all summer, but I've gotten some stuff accomplished. Definitely have. But yeah.
Yeah, you got to keep accomplishing. But yeah, I mean, I've been to Colombia the last 2 years. I took my family down, spent the whole month there. Last year, I went tuna fishing in this kind of very remote lodge, only accessible by small prop plane, and then by boat ride in a super panga to get to the lodge, and fish for tuna for a week, and it was absolutely amazing. Slept in these huts with the waves crashing right there, and mosquito nets over the bed, and that's how I like to travel, just like really, really deep and roughing it. And then this year, went back to Colombia for a month, and then we went on a peacock bass fishing trip, just in the middle of freaking nowhere. We rode a 1946 DC-3 cargo plane, which, by the way, they have one in the Evergreen Museum here in Oregon. That's how old they are, but they're still using them in Colombia. So we rode that with the cargo in the middle over the jungle and then over the plains, and then they dropped us on basically like a dirt landing strip out there in the border with Venezuela, and then rode in these old Land Cruisers on a 6-hour ride on these dirt roads, and then arrived at the fishing spot. So
that's so cool.
It's that's the kind of travel I love, and real estate affords you to be able to do that, to have the time to do that if you set your business up right, which is why it was really important to me to build a team instead of being just a solo operator. And then, of course, it affords us the money if you do it right.
Exactly. And the trend here that I'm noticing with, I guess, how you're spending your money and how I like to spend my money is less on things and more on experiences. Do I have that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because neither of us live in a mansion. We both, do well, but where our money gets directed, I think is a great reflection on, what we value in life. And I've noticed that the both of us really kind of devote it less to, buying a Ferrari and more about, going to that remote fishing lodge or like taking your family to a special place.
Right. We drive used vehicles. We live in a modest house. Yesterday, I bought some used winter jackets for my son off of Facebook Marketplace that my wife wanted me to get. So we save where we can, for sure. We search out deals. But if I have to spend $5,000 to go on a fishing trip that I want to go on, then I have no problem. I have no problem spending that.
And down to the smallest things. And I've told this story a couple times to a couple friends about how you and I, our values align on value proposition in a ton of different ways, like that $5,000 fishing trip. And the example that I use is what you hit up the group thread the other day with, which was
the Subway.
Yes, the Subway avocado. It was Scott said, "Hey, did you know that avocado at Subway is $2 now? I like avocado, but to me that's just not worth it." And so here we have a millionaire hitting up his friend saying, "I'm not spending this $2. It's so inconsequential."
Yeah, I couldn't actually articulate why, but it was a $11 sandwich, and I wanted the avocado, but I wasn't willing to spend $2.25 for it. So I said, isn't that funny? I'm not going to spend the $2.25. And George said it's because of the value proposition. You like avocado, but it's not worth $2.25. You don't like it $2.25 worth.
25, yeah, and no matter what it is, at what cost, I've bought things that are crazy expensive and crazy cheap, and thought to myself like, man, what a deal, or oh man, I got taken on this, and that is part of the enjoyment. It's getting as I age and as we all get older, it's getting to be a much more significant part of the proposition for me. It's how much, how do I feel about this relative to what I've actually paid for it? And no matter how many resources I accumulate, this rings true day after day.
That's part of the reason I love the exotic deep travel that I do. If I'm getting this amazing fish lunch on the beach where they have the fish right there from the ocean, and they cut it for me, and there's some lady cooking it in oil on the sand, and it's like so good, and it cost me $7. That tastes so much better than spending $50 on a fish lunch in Portland, Oregon.
So yeah, so true. Somebody asked me recently what my favorite restaurant was, and I had to think long and hard because if you live in Portland, you've got amazing food options, and it's not like New York City or LA where you have to completely dump out your pocketbook to have like an amazing culinary experience. Like there's so many options, but what I actually chose was a tiny little beachside taqueria down in Mexico. At a surf break called The Ranch, and there's a tiny little taqueria, and it's like this like thatched roof and a grill, and they serve chilaquiles and like just basic Mexican breakfast, but you're completely remote, you're on the beach, you're in the shade, it's served to you, with like a Mexican Gatorade or whatever it is, and it's like $3. It's so massively, incredibly cheap and so darn good. I go there and I order like 3 different breakfasts, 4 Gatorades, because I've just surfed all day and I'm completely knackered. And I just love it. It's gorgeous outside. The food is amazing and it costs next to nothing, and also I'm with my dad when I'm doing it. So my dad and I go on these surf trips together. And so the combination of all these things just comes together to form like a perfect culinary experience. So that is my favorite restaurant.
Especially after doing a hard day of some physical activity like surfing, and then combine that with that value proposition and that food, which is incredible.
Oh yeah. It's just it's an absolute climax. It's great. So yeah, so bringing it back to wholesaling. So you eventually you were wholesaling, then you're flipping, then you're starting to accumulate. So
I want to just one more thing on that accumulating rentals is there was a moment in 2021 when I bought that first rental, and we're sitting around the bonfire, and George says to me, with the deals that Scott gets with his deal flow, there's no reason he can't have 10 rentals by the end of the year. I was like, that's ridiculous. And then it just stuck in my head. It stuck in my head. I'm like, well, what if? And I'm like, no, it's still not possible. But then I bought another one and then another one. I'm like, okay, well, once these are finished, that's 3. And I just went on a tear and bought a bunch, which I don't recommend because it's like such an incredibly stressful year having all that debt service that we had to pay and then projects sitting. And that was really, really stressful, really tough. Put a lot of strain on us, but we came out of it okay.
Right.
And now we have a good portfolio. Yeah. But I mean, really, I guess because I'm really competitive, when you threw that out there, it just stuck into me like a challenge. I know you didn't mean it like a challenge, but I made it a personal challenge.
I love that. That's where your mind went, because I'm the same way, and whenever there's a challenge, it compels me to reach deeper down and to go further. And I remember that conversation because at the time, I mean, Scott had really amazing deal flow and still does, but I was thinking to myself, like, God, he's making these wholesale margins and it's great for the cash flow. But, if you talk to me enough, you know that I'm all about like wealth creation and sort of minimal on cash flow, high on wealth creation. It changes day by day, but at least at the time, I could tell that Scott was crushing it in the cash flow game. Why not translate that to wealth creation? And so I was like, man, with that deal flow, you could just have rentals coming out of your ear. I think I pulled 10 rentals completely out of my hat, but Scott does just that. Like a year later, he had 10 rentals, and try accumulating 10 rentals, in your first year, whatever, year and a half or whatever it is in real estate. It was pretty remarkable. And since then, you've accumulated even more. If you were listening to the beginning of the podcast, Scott says, "Oh, I don't know if it's an empire. If it's got a lot of rentals, that I'm not sure exactly where we're drawing the line at empire, but it's what you've done within a short amount of time is pretty remarkable. And but what's next is probably a little bit less single family oriented and maybe oriented, sort of towards the next level. And so I guess my question to you is, what's next? What's like the next thing that you're working on? What are you excited about?
What I'm excited about right now is twofold. So when it comes to real estate, it's commercial real estate. And what I'm going to be looking for is sort of metal buildings, light industrial, and then to some extent, multifamily, like kind of 10 to 20 unit multifamilies, mobile home parks. So all those asset classes, I want to be finding those deals and wholesaling them. So that's what's next for me. And the reason is because single family, like you said earlier, it's gotten harder to wholesale because everybody's doing it. Mm-hmm. We still find those deals, but we have to spend more money to get those deals. And we're just not getting those laydowns as much. We're in the first year, I said I got a bunch of them in the first few months, and then now it's like we got 1 or 2 a year where we just have like a huge margin on it. So it's gotten more competitive, but the money that we can make with the commercial is just so much more. And I spent a bunch of money and went to Texas to learn how to do this, and I'm excited to implement that. So that will be next. And then also with the rentals, it's great for wealth creation, but it really doesn't change our life right now. The cash flow is pretty minimal on these single families when the rates went up. So that's all going to be for, my future 10, 15 years down the road. I'm sure it's going to be great cash flow, but doesn't really change my life very much right now.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. You have to be patient. And if I could just give you one piece of unsolicited advice is just, be patient with those, because the first rentals I bought were like in the mid 2000s when I was 20 some year old kid, didn't know shit, but still did it anyway. And I gotta tell you, man, there is not a single rental that I've ever had that hasn't been at least a little bit of a thorn in my side, over the years. And we're talking about my entire professional career. And so, I've kept some of them, I've sold some of them, but like, I tell you what, man, like every single one of those some of them still have the original debt service from back then. And I've got equity positions that I really do need to reposition. I need to trade up. But but yeah, it's really kind of hard to walk away from the cash flow that comes when you just own these assets for long periods of time. And so when you're an old man, when you get to be my age, Scott's younger than me. I like to point that out every so often. When you get to be an old man and you've got, debt service that's barely breaking even, cash flow negative right now, it won't be like that for long. I'm optimistic about the long-term prospects of real estate, of Portland, of all of the above. And so you're going to be just fine, I guess is what I'm saying. But it sounds like next for you is sort of like the next chapter is going to be bigger, commercial, and kind of transitioning a little bit, not completely out of residential, but kind of more in a commercial direction.
Definitely. And once this takes off, we may shut down the residential completely.
Yeah.
At least when it comes to wholesaling. But I want to keep one, maybe two per year of the commercial stuff and wholesale the rest and just amass capital. And the second thing that I'm interested in for the near future is, and this is completely unrelated to real estate because I don't really care about real estate that much. It just happens to be what I do right now.
Right.
And I think I'm okay at it. But I want to find some business opportunity in Latin America because I have worked there in a sales capacity in the past in Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Dominican Republic, Mexico. I'd travel all these countries and sell. And I loved it. That was like, I would have paid to do that job and they paid me.
There you go.
So, but there was no wealth creation and there was no savings the first time around when I did it. This time around, I want to build a business down there. And I want to build a business that's large and scalable, like a McDonald's type of thing.
There you go. I love it.
And maybe it would be a McDonald's because they don't have good hamburgers in South America.
Oh, man.
So if I could like take the In-N-Out kind of burger and scale it across the whole region, but just something like that I could scale across the region, that's the kind of thing that I think about all the time and is really exciting for me. So I'll continue with the real estate but I'm going to put people in charge where they can participate heavily in the upside and keep things running up here and then build something down there.
I love it. Yeah, dude, that's just the entrepreneurial mindset. I love it. And there's no doubt in my mind that whatever it is, whether it's being the Colombian McDonald's or whatever it is that you do down there, that you'll succeed. Scott Dalinger is not only is he a great guy, but he's the slogan that I always use in front of him, in front of everybody, is "Don't sleep on Scott Dalinger." whether he's doing real estate or really anything else, the guy is going to crush it, and I have every confidence in him. And dude, I super appreciate you coming on here and talking about your life and your business and everything. It's been great to talk to you, man.
Yeah, thank you, George. Thanks for having me. I'm still not really sure what this podcast is about, but I know we're talking about my business here today. We're talking a bit about real estate. Excited to hear the other episodes and, interesting to reflect on what we've accomplished in 3 or 4 years, but it's about what we're going to do in the future. That's what.
Oh, yeah. No, in this show, I take millionaires, I dunk them in cold water, and I talk to them about their businesses.
Nice.
And that's what we've done today. So you've done a great job doing that. How do people find you if they want to find you?
I have an Instagram, which is Scott Dalinger Real Estate. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the main thing that I put stuff out there on.
Right on. All right. We'll hit him up on Instagram.
Let me just say thank you to you, George. You've been a great inspiration, I'd say, with real estate and kind of with lifestyle. I love how hard you charge, your athleticism, the way that you've run. You brought me onto your running team, your relay team, the 11 jerks in a squirt the past few years. And you're just always up in that ante with physical feats, with family vacations, with wealth creation, with real estate. You're always pushing the boundaries as to what's next. And I take that as a huge inspiration. So yeah, you've inspired me a lot.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate those words, man. I really do. It's what I aspire to. And I like to bring people on the show that just think, feel, and act similarly. And so Scott lives that. And that's why he's a frozen millionaire. All right. Thanks again, man.
Love it. Thanks.
All right. Have a good one. So that's the story of Scott Dalinger, one of my favorite people, and I'm going to repeat something that I said in the podcast, which is don't sleep on Scott Dalinger. And the reason for this is the rate of his ascent in an ultra-competitive space. His ascent to financial freedom using real estate is truly remarkable, and if I started at the rate that he did, I'd probably be doing this podcast for my own private island. His work ethic is contagious, he's a family man, and I have a lot of respect for him and what he's built. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing even bigger things from this guy as he continues kicking ass and taking names in the world of real estate investing. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow me on all your favorite social platforms. Just search for McCleary Realty and Development or me, George McCleary. We'll see you next time, and until then, be sure to embrace the cold to ignite the dream.